All right, let's get right into it. Picture this. You're on a totally routine flight. Everyone's boarded, the door is shut, you're all set for pushback. But then, one tiny, simple action sets off this absolute cascade of chaos right there on the tarmac. We're going to break down a very, very expensive mistake.
So, just how expensive are we talking? Well, $70,000. That's right, a $70,000 mistake. And that's just the estimated price tag for the piece of equipment itself, not even the full cost.
And get this, the immediate result was just bizarre. The passengers, they were literally trapped on the plane until a team of engineers could come and manually cut the slide away. So not only was this a huge financial hit, it created this weird lockdown situation right there at the gate.
So all of this leads to the one big question we're going to unpack here. How in the world does a veteran flight attendant, we're talking someone with 26 years of experience, make a mistake that costs a fortune and ends up trapping passengers on their own plane?
Okay, so what exactly went down? Let's dissect this mistake. The answer, you might be surprised to hear, isn't some huge dramatic failure. It's actually a breakdown in a totally standard, everyday procedure.
So here's the play-by-play. First, as the plane gets ready to push back from the gate, the flight attendants arm the doors. Now, what that means is they're basically connecting the emergency slide to the door so it will pop out automatically if it's opened in an emergency. And right there, that's where the critical error happened. A crew member accidentally lifted the handle on that armed door. That little action triggered the emergency power assist, which is designed to literally blow the door open in a crisis. The result? The door flies open and the slide inflates in seconds. Bam, no way to stop it.
And here's what makes this so wild. The human element. The crew member who did this wasn't some rookie on their first day. Nope. This was a veteran with 26 years on the job. So you can't chalk this up to inexperience, which honestly just makes the whole thing even more puzzling, right? Okay, so that brings us to the immediate chaos that followed. Let's take a look at what it's like to be trapped by a giant inflatable slide, both for the people on the ground and for everyone stuck inside the plane. Now, the key detail here is where the slide deployed. It didn't just pop out into open space. It inflated and wedged itself directly against the jet bridge, the tunnel you walk through to get on the plane. This created a massive inflatable barrier. The whole operation just ground to a halt. There was literally no way for anyone to get off the aircraft. And the impact on the flight schedule, it was huge. The plane was supposed to leave at 5:30 p.m. It took about an hour just to get that slide detached. By the time they actually took off, it was 9:11 p.m. That's a delay of almost 4 hours, all from one single split-second mistake.
Man, can you even imagine how that flight attendant felt? They got on the PA and apologized to all the passengers, and what they said really puts a human face on this whole thing. They said, "In my 26-year career, this never happened." You can just feel the shock and, the pure professional embarrassment in that one sentence. But the fallout didn't just stop there. Oh no. This one mistake created this costly ripple effect that went way, way beyond just a single slide and one delayed flight. Let's talk about the money, because it's staggering. Just replacing the slide itself, that can cost anywhere from $50,000 to $70,000. Then you've got to repack and repair it. That's another 20 grand or so. But then you start adding in hotels for stranded passengers, paying the crew for all that extra time, moving the aircraft around. Pretty soon, the total cost for the airline blows past 6 figures. Easy. And of course, you can't forget the human cost, what this meant for the travelers. It wasn't just a 4-hour delay. Nope. A ton of passengers missed their connections in Salt Lake City. That means unplanned hotel stays, frantic calls to rebook flights, and just completely messed up travel plans for dozens and dozens of people. Now, at this point, you're probably thinking, wow, what a freak accident. 1 in a million, right? Well, here's the twist. This is actually a surprisingly common error in the airline industry. Let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture. Yeah, in the aviation world, this kind of thing has its own name. They call them inadvertent slide deployments, or ISDs for short. It's exactly what it sounds like, an emergency slide going off when it's not supposed to. And here's something interesting. Most of these don't even happen before takeoff. They happen after the plane has landed, when the crew is trying to disarm the doors. And this whole thing probably has you asking the same question a Reddit user perfectly summed up. Shouldn't it be something with quite a safety check for making this kind of mistake? I mean, it's a totally fair question, right? It seems like there should be a foolproof system.
And this is where things get really fascinating. You have this clash between one person's experience and the cold, hard industry data. For that flight attendant, this was a shocking once-in-a-26-year career event. But data from a manufacturer like Airbus tells a completely different story. They estimate there can be up to 3 of these accidental deployments every single day across the globe.
So you have to ask, what's the systemic risk here? Well, like we said, most of these happen while disarming the doors at the gate. And yeah, airlines have strict procedures where crew members are supposed to cross-check each other. But think about it. It's a high-pressure job, turnarounds are fast, and all it takes is a moment of distraction or fatigue for a mistake to happen, especially if only one attendant is working that door. And remember, the risk isn't just about money. A slide deploying unexpectedly can seriously hurt ground crew or smash into equipment. It is a really big deal.
And that really leaves us with a final thought to chew on. If a seasoned professional, someone with a 26-year career, can make this one simple but incredibly costly mistake, it makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other hidden, complex systems that we rely on every single day are also balanced on that same thin razor's edge of human perfection?
Okay, so picture this. You're on a plane. You've just landed, you're taxiing to the gate, ready to get off. It feels like the safest part of the trip, right? I mean, what could possibly go wrong? Well, what if I told you that one tiny, simple mistake at this exact moment could unleash a $70,000 catastrophe and leave every single person on board stranded for hours? Yeah, that's exactly what happened. And we're going to break down the anatomy of this unbelievably expensive error.
So let me ask you this. What do you think is the single most expensive mistake a flight attendant can make while the plane is parked, safe and sound, right at the gate? You might be thinking of something really complex, but the answer, well, it's shockingly simple. The consequences, though? Anything but. Let's set the scene. We've got a Delta Airlines flight, an Airbus A220 to be specific. It's just landed at Pittsburgh International Airport. Everything's totally normal. The plane is parked, the jet bridge is moving in, and then bam! All of a sudden there's chaos as a massive emergency slide inflates and explodes out from the side of the aircraft.
So, how in the world does something like this happen? I mean, this wasn't some sort of crazy emergency or mechanical failure. Nope, this whole mess came down to one single critical mistake in procedure. Let's dig into what actually went wrong. Okay, so here's the deal. The slide went off because a crew member opened the cabin door while it was still armed. And if you're not familiar, armed basically means the door is set to emergency mode. When a door is armed, the second you open it, it automatically triggers that evacuation slide. I mean, that's its job in a real emergency. And this is where standard procedure is so important. See, the very first thing the crew's supposed to do after parking at the gate is to cross-check with each other and then disarm the doors. It's a simple flick of a lever that switches them from emergency to manual mode. In this case, that critical step got missed. The door was opened while it was still armed and poof, that's all it takes.
You know, an explosive whoosh and a giant yellow slide. It's definitely dramatic. But the real shocker? That comes when you see the price tag. Let's get into the financial aftermath, because this one simple action triggers a massive expense for the airline.
So let's talk numbers. Go ahead, take a guess. What do you think the final bill is for one of these accidental deployments? And remember, you're not just, repacking a slide. You're paying for the complex inflation systems, the specialized labor to fix everything, and then getting the whole thing recertified. The bill comes out to somewhere between $50,000 and $70,000. That is just a staggering amount of money for a momentary lapse in procedure. It's a huge financial hit for the airline, all from one wrong move.
Just to put that number in perspective, for the cost of fixing this one mistake, the airline could have gone out and bought a brand new luxury car. It just goes to show you how ridiculously expensive this piece of safety equipment is, equipment you hope is never ever used, especially not at the gate.
But the cost isn't just about the money, not even close. For all the people stuck on that plane, the nightmare was just getting started. So let's look at the human cost, the real-world impact this had on passengers who were just trying to get on with their day.
This timeline just shows you how quickly things went sideways. The moment that slide deployed, the clock started ticking. Passengers were stuck on the plane for hours, totally confused. The aircraft, of course, had to be taken out of service, and in the end, everyone was looking at a 4-hour delay.
And a 4-hour delay? That isn't just about sitting around and waiting. It's a total domino effect. People miss their connecting flights. Entire travel plans get completely wrecked. It turns into a massive, stressful headache for hundreds of people, all because of that one single moment at the door. So you might be wondering, was this just a 1 in a million freak accident? Or is this something that happens more than we realize? Let's zoom out a bit and put this whole incident into the bigger picture of the airline industry.
Believe it or not, there's actually an official industry name for this. It's called an inadvertent slide deployment, or ISD for short. And just like the definition says here, it's almost always caused by good old-fashioned human error, specifically opening an armed door when there's no emergency.
So what this all boils down to is that while these things are pretty rare, they are a known recurring problem across the globe. This isn't just a Delta thing or a Pittsburgh Airport thing. It's a known risk that's baked into the manual procedures that flight crews have to follow every single day, both right before takeoff and right after landing. You know, if there's one single idea to take away from this whole story, it's this right here. This was a simple mistake, literally just missing one step in a checklist you do 1,000 times. But it kicked off this incredible chain reaction of complex, expensive, and frustrating consequences that affected finances, logistics, and the lives of hundreds of people.
And that kind of leaves us with one final thought, doesn't it? This was one flight attendant, one door, and one split-second mistake. It really makes you wonder, what other tiny, seemingly insignificant errors are out there in all kinds of different industries that have these huge, hidden consequences we never even think about?